Okay, the next thing to take your portraiture further is to develop some understanding of the skull. Okay, and I want to talk you through a couple of really basic understandings that the skull has going on. The first thing, the thing that I want to point out is we're going to take a form follows function approach to this. So you've got a brain. There's a little brain in here. You've got visual apparatus, right? Is it apparati? You've got scent. You smell stuff. There's food, right? You've got to eat and chew things, okay? We've got audio going on. So every one of these things has ways that it's housed, that it's held, that it's protected, that it's facilitated, and it's this idea of form follows function. So if we start out with the brain, the thing that is clear about the brain is that it's really it's this amazing tool and it's incredibly fragile. And the way that the body compensated for the fragile quality of the brain was it gave it this really thick case, right? It built this like just huge, thick bone, this all these bones fused into this single case, right? And so the skull has a brain case as part of it. And it's kind of the biggest part. You know, you've got your brain case. The next thing, eyes. How did the human body accommodate the need for being able to see where you're going? So you've got these eyes. If the sun comes down like this and gets directly into those eyes, it would be intensely blinding. So what happened was the body sent a shelf out this way, a bone shelf, like that. It extended this way, like that, and it created this shelf right here. And by extending this way, the next thing that happened was your brain was living back in here. We'll just use a really goofy symbol for brain. That was living back in there, and it stretched into here. And it gave us a later evolutionary development, the prefrontal cortex. So here's the frontal cortex, and way down here is the prefrontal cortex, which I don't think dogs have a prefrontal cortex. So we have a prefrontal cortex, and it has these neurons in here which are in charge of empathy. It's a really sophisticated later development of the brain. When they do evolutionary studies of the brain, they go through and they say the brain begins in the body and it makes its way up from the body into this region, which is called the limbic region. It's the lower region of the body, and we share this with ancient creatures like lizards, right? And then it moves up into the main portion of the brain, the essential, where a lot of sense perception is processed out into the frontal cortex. That's this stretch forward. And so the shape, imagine a circle for the shape of the brain, and we're going to extend it. This drawing here extends left to right, right? But what happens, how would we start to express that if it was coming towards us? If we took this kind of squared surface here, and that starts to show this moving forward, right? We can start to say, oh, there's a brain moving forward. What can I take and turn that? Like if I take this and I go like this, it's a nice shape, right? And we can start to imagine the brain and the frontal cortex and this shelf here. It's the imagining of this shelf that's on the underside that shades the eyeballs. So you've got your eyeballs living in here. and they've been shaded by this great overhanging thing here, which is cool. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is the jaw. So here's this need for food, right? And if we approach the need for food, imagine a chicken leg. Here's a chicken leg. And if you went to take that and stick it in here, you know, here's your chicken leg stuck in there. Unless you're a snake, like snakes have this and they develop this like ability to digest once it was in here. But for us, it would block our esophagus and we wouldn't be able to breathe, right? Like our windpipe and our windpipe and the passage for food are so closely related here. So the body needed to come up with a solution to that. And so it came up with this set of pinchers that take this guy and turn it into small sizes that can be passed down and more readily developed. So what we needed was an ability to like pinch and pinch and pinch. And here's how the body decided to do it. In order to do that, you need two things. We needed a stationary plane, and we needed a plane that could move up and down. And here was the plane that we could move up and down. And it gets hinged. Eyeballs. And then hanging on the side of the head is this thing right here, hinged. And passing from here is this shape like this. Passing all the way down from underneath this shelf. We go right to that shelf and we pass down underneath like this. And there's this, if we look at this, if we looked up and we looked into that, what we would see is we would see a horseshoe shape right here. And the piece that works in conjunction with it is also a horseshoe shape, only bigger. It comes here and it's a bigger horseshoe shape. There's the horseshoe of it, and it comes down like this, and we go up and we've got a hinge point right here. And in order, so we've got this point right here. So the jaw will do this. Frontal cortex, eyeballs, the maxilla, and the jaw can do this because it's hinged. It can open up really wide to get a hold of the chicken bone. Okay? Okay. Now, let's look at that from the front. How does that look from the front? Again, we have this part of the head. We drop down into the jaw. The back part of the jaw is wider than the front part of the jaw. And so we can show that, again, by these overlapping boxes. You see, if I take a box like this, and I take a box like this one becomes in front, and that one becomes behind. And watch, the next tool that I have, I can show orientation. Like if I take a box like this, and the one that's in front goes this way. Notice how I've moved it upwards, and I've moved it over. So by moving it upwards and over, I'm showing the jaw, I'm showing a shape, which could be the jaw, in a very different orientation, right? So this moving of the box from the back and the box from the front help me orient the jaw. It gives me a tool by which I can tell the person viewing this the orientation of it. Okay, the next thing that we have to deal with is we have these air holes up here. So it's got these air holes, right? And imagine that the air holes were just mounted just like straight on the surface of this creature, right? This is how I feel. I'm just like looking, eating, breathing. That's me. So if they were just mounted right like that, every time it rained, you might drown, you know? If water could just like run freely inside of your nostrils. So the nose developed, the body developed this great cover, the nose, right? And it starts with a bone development. So they weren't messing around with this. They weren't messing around, and this bone development comes up and around. And again, we've got that horseshoe shape. So the bridge of the nose is shaped like that, and it's wedged right up in here. It has this, it's wedged, right? And so you have, here's the front of it, here's the back of it. Notice again how these things work for me. Say I take the front of it and I put it here, and I take the back of it and I put that there. You see how I've changed the orientation of the nose by doing that? And look at the orientation of the nose that way. It's like this and like that, and I'm looking at it in profile. Okay, so it starts with this bony development, which comes down and around this, right? You see this? I lock onto one side of it in one place and the other side of it in the other, and now it spans these two, and there's this hole that lives underneath here. Okay, and it was a nice big hole where you can take in a lot of air, but it's so big that we needed more. And so they send a bit of cartilage out this way, and then another bit of cartilage to go even further, out further, okay? So the morphology, the shape system of the human body, and these, they gave us room inside of the nose. They gave us these extra little passages that we could use to open our nostrils even further and take air in. Even though it's coming from below, you've got this great possibility of taking air in this way. All right? And the next thing that we have to think through is that based on having this great hinge, so you've got this shape, you've got the frontal eminence dropping down into the brow, okay, coming out into the nose, which rests itself on that, the maxilla, meeting the mandible, the jaw underneath, coming upwards, hinging into the brain case, right? Now this here, in order to go up and down, it needed muscular development. It needed something, and it's like it needs like powerful muscles in order to do it. And they wanted to, the body was like trying to get this to have this great upward power. And what they did was they mounted muscles right here. There are muscles that are mounted all along the side. And in order to mount them on the side, so here's the face of the skeleton right here, okay? Halfway gives us the spot for the eyes. Above halfway gives us the space for the brow, okay? Halfway between here and here gives us the space for the nose. There's a ridge right here, and it flattens, this side of the skull flattens, and there's muscles all attached from here, and they come down into here. And then the next thing that we can deal with, because we've got this muscle passageway going like this. So the next thing that happened is, in order to hold these muscles in place, there's a bridge that goes over them. And it goes over them and it comes out this way, and as it connects into the front of the face, it makes this shape, which we call the cheekbone. It's the zygomatic arch. It comes from here, this bridge. It starts right here and it goes upwards, and then it goes back and across. It shoots back and across right there. And it gets really, really skinny in here, and it connects in with the eye socket, right? So it forms that, okay? So I'm gonna go and I wanna show you here a more careful sketch. So here we're looking at a front view. notice the way that I'm going to use circles and squares. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a non-labored but somewhat careful circular drawing. Okay, I'm going to go from there down, and I'm going to add a square to that. Okay, I'm going to quickly mark my proportions from here to here, the middle of that. That's where the eye sockets live. The eye sockets live right in here. They need to be close enough together that they leave me room to have an eye space on the outside. So I'm going to start searching for that, okay? That's where the eye sockets start. This ridge, it lives about here. It's just outside the eye socket. There's a ridge that lives out there, okay? Halfway between here and there, that's the bottom of my nose. The bottom of my nose I'm going to show as just a little triangle for right now. Halfway between there and here, that's the bottom of the mouth, okay? So there's the midline of the mouth right in here. Let's construct our skull through this, okay? So zygomatic arch, it's right here, the cheekbone. Here's the cheekbone right there. Now the eye has this really interesting and cool design that goes along with it. Okay, here's what happens. Again, we're looking, if you look down at the human skull, you see a shape like that. What this points out is that the eye starts here, but it ends really, really far back, right? So what I'm looking here, I'm not just looking laterally, I'm also looking backwards, okay? So this part here and this part here are further back, which is nice because if you imagine this eyeball here turning this way and turning further this way, if the bone over here stays out of the way, that would greatly increase my peripheral view. And so the shape of the eye socket is actually like that. You see that shape of the eye socket? It actually has this, it's almost like a taco shell. Like you can think of the shape of the eye socket as being sort of like that, okay? So in here, we see the eye socket receding to a corner, an inner corner, and then from there, it circles around and comes back in over about here, okay? And here's the top of it, and here's the top of it. And this piece here is called the glabella, and it works its way. You could almost draw a big circle in there, and then over the top of it, a little circle, and then like a smaller circle, and you see this moving forward again of a big form. There's this big form that's moving forward, okay? Cut through here, we have the shape of this bony structure, right? It's cut through here, and it's a horseshoe. It horseshoes back. The front of this is thinner, just like the front of everything on the face is thinner. The front is thinner, and look at what I'm going to do is I'm going to put teeth on this one. I'll say, here's my two front teeth. And here's like a little drawing trick to show this thing receding in space. My next tooth, I'm going to show it as a little bit skinnier, right, as I move into side plane, and then I'm going to show it a little bit skinnier still as I move into further side plane, and now I'm going to start to make it so that they're so skinny that they essentially disappear back there. So they're getting skinnier as they go back, okay? Right here, bridge of the nose. Right there, that's the bridge of the nose, and it comes down on either side of the line here and extends outwards like that, kind of shaped like the spade in a deck of cards. Okay, meeting this underneath a horseshoe shape. Here's the front of that horseshoe shape, and here's the back, right here. On the side, space on the side of it. Okay. Cheekbones. They come down and they attach into here. They attach right into here. Okay. And a ridge and extending backwards, the zygomatic arch. A ridge and extending backwards, the zygomatic arch. Eyeballs live in here. This here has a tendency to have corners. And what I want you to notice when you're looking at this is I want you to notice the times when I'm using square shapes, squared shapes, like so here's where squares help out. Like you see how this and this happen to be in front of this and this, so we could perceive a kind of square relationship in here. And circle shapes, you see how this whole upper surface has a spherical quality to it, and then this here, that has a cylindrical quality. We could think of a quality of cylinder, and it's being able to use the tools of squares, circles, spheres, and cylinders inside of drawings that are essentially composite shapes. That's where the perspective, the solidity, and bigger development of your drawings really takes place. Okay.